Last week we heard that wonderful parable about growing, seeds being scattered on the different surfaces, the seeds in the thorns, in the pathway, and eventually the seeds on the good soil. And those seeds on the good soil having an amazing harvest, 100-fold, 60-fold, 30-fold harvest. And it kind of gets us thinking as to what causes this growth. How does this growing happen? Because Jesus speaks so much about growth in the small seed, in the growing ear of corn, weeds and wheat growing together in the same field. We hear that today in our gospel reading. And the rising of yeast. All of these growing aspects seem to suggest to us that you need a lot of patience. You need to have trust in the whole process of growing. And then we have that little phrase that we've learned from when we've been so high, growing pains. For growing to happen, there has to be a bit of pain, has to be a bit of discomfort. Growing pains. That phrase is helpful. It nudges us in the really good direction of understanding that discomfort is a real necessity for growth to take place. We would prefer it to be otherwise, though, wouldn't we? Because really we like the easy life. We like the easy option. We always like the more comfortable path. And so perhaps that's why growth for many of us is something which is so sporadic and not regular and not really looked for. Because you see, growing is something that can be part of our experience no matter what age we are. We're always in that potential to grow just a little bit more, to grow in my understanding, to grow in my capacity to give kindness and grace, to grow in my ability to bless others and encourage, to grow in the achievements that I'm able to do, and to grow as a person and in a community where growth is the central bit of who we are. So for that to be the case, then this little phrase, growing pains, just nudges us and reminds us discomfort, really important. In the wonderful chapter from Romans chapter 8, St. Paul describes how creation is groaning for the liberation of the children of God. The creation is in discomfort, for there to be a growth, for the revelation that we may truly be children of God. But you see, discomfort so often has a negative aptitude for us. It kind of suggests something to be avoided, something to be dodged. And so whenever in life there is a little bit of pain, there is a bit of discomfort, we tend to opt out at that point. We tend to drop out and say enough is enough. We're going to settle for what we have. And so growth will always be meager in that context. Why? Because the discomfort has been dodged. The discomfort has been sidestepped and we've missed out. Whereas if we to meet the discomfort head on, if we're to name it and embrace it, then more often than not, the discomfort is seen to be bogus. It's seen to be primarily just in our heads. And we've dodged something which we don't really have to dodge at all. And we've believed a lie. So sometimes we just have to name the discomfort. And if we've got people around us who can name it with us, then we're in so much stronger place. And growth then begins to happen. Now, pre-lockdown, I used to run a 5k run on Southampton Common with the Southampton Park Run. And in that run, after every first kilometre of the run, I would be utterly puffed out. And I could easily just give up at that point and say, ooh, that's enough. I've done a good first K. I'm really tired out, and that'll be it today. But I didn't do that. And I never did that, although every run I did, I felt like doing that. And I kept on running. And the pain and discomfort never got worse. In fact, it got easier. And the 5k would always be completed. And the satisfaction I would have that I would have run through that initial discomfort would be huge. And something would be happening in that 5k would be working in my headspace, just making my mind that little bit stronger. That capacity to meet head-on discomfort and not to be fazed by it, but to, in that case, to run through it. And here's when that parable of the weeds and wheat come in that Jesus gives us. Because so often for us in this day and age, the comfortable option is to pass judgment. The comfortable option is to sort the good and the bad. To say, oh, you're good, you're bad. To be very precise in our judgments of people and situations. And Jesus in this parable is saying, just don't go there. Don't do it. Don't take that comfortable action, that all too easy action, because if you do that, you're going to pull up what is good. Leave it to the angels. And sometimes just leaving stuff to the angels, especially when it comes to judging, making assessments of people, is such a difficult thing to do. It's such an uncomfortable thing to do. There's something in us that just makes us feel so good when we make that mental judgment of blame upon somebody or something. But to not do it, well, that's sometimes like creation groaning. And withholding from doing such a straightforward kind of action which has been so habitual, well, when we do that, the benefits can be huge. It enables stuff to grow. Enables stuff which perhaps initially we would have thought was no good, but ends up being something of real quality. You see, there will be hurdles in our lives. There will be obstacles which we have to climb over. There'll be things which just make things more difficult for us, but they don't have to be avoided. We can meet them because Jesus carries us in those times. He takes these problems and these discomforts on for us. We're not alone. Too often, communities and groups of people are framed by easy judgments. And Jesus is warning us in this lovely parable we hear today. Don't go there. So don't forget that little phrase, growing pains. It's not just about the teenagers. It's about us. Whatever age we are, we have the capacity to grow strength in the way we think, to grow kindness in what we say, to grow patience in the way we live, to grow in the very knowledge heaven on earth. Amen.